Good afternoon. This is Michael Harding.
And this is Christina Harding.
And we're here with On the Arts. You may have heard our commercial just about maybe 15 seconds ago, actually.
It sounded amazing on that.
We actually heard and thought, oh, we better do a show because it announced.
Quick, fast, yeah.
But here we are. The purpose of On the Arts, of course, to blow the lid off of all of these wonderful little artistic secrets that we have here in southern Utah. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, one of the things that I'm finding is, yes, there's a lot to be done as far as attending art events and also participating in art events.
So many.
It's really about the people.
Yes, the people behind the art. That's what we like learning about.
The artists. And one of the things we have noticed is artists love to talk.
No. No.
What a wonderful opportunity to...
I don't think we've had one person in here who didn't like to talk.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're always a little concerned of how are we going to fill the time? Are we going to have enough to talk about? And always we hit that point where the show has to end and we think, okay, this is a sad time. Did we really even get close to everything we had to talk about?
Yes. And so for anybody who wants to be on the show in the future, I mean, it's pretty easygoing and it's just an easy conversation for 45 minutes, but we learned so much about that artist. So don't be afraid at all to message us. If you want to be on the arts, go ahead and message us on the Arts with Michael and Christina Harding on our Facebook page, and we'll be glad to get you a time.
And we do broadcast live all of these radio programs.
Yes.
And we broadcast video as well, which is
look
sometimes...
pretty. Yeah. Try to look pretty while you're on the radio. Yeah.
Sometimes a bit of a surprise to our guests. But they are on camera. We do broadcast live on YouTube and also on Facebook. If you go to Radio St. George, that's radio space ST space George.
Well, I have to say right now you're not on the camera.
No, I've
Where'd
decided
your face go?
I actually put the camera on who looks good here in the studio, and that would be my wife.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Valentine's Day is coming up.
Valentine's is definitely coming, yeah.
But we've been really blessed to have a lot of, or a huge variety of guests on this show. Certainly, both Christina and I, we're involved heavily in the theater scene here and in Cedar City and southern Utah in general.
But there's more than theater out there.
You see, that was eye-opening for me.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
We've had not only theater folks here on the show, but a lot of music folks as well. We had a show just 2 days ago where we had Dr. Rhonda Rhodes as well as Dr. Glenn Webb talking about not only being musicians, but being musician educators. And also we got into some of the vagaries of jazz.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, nobody gets more excited about talking about jazz than Dr. Glenn Webb.
Oh, yeah. He's a cool cat.
Absolutely. And we have dubbed him now Cool Cat Webb, Cool Cat Glenn. Now, we're actually very happy to have in the studio today a special guest who actually joined us all the way back in season 1 of On the Arts. And she has a perspective of art that we don't get a whole lot of here on the show. We had Jamie Young just a few shows ago who talked about the business side of show business and some of the behind-the-scenes things that need to happen in order to get these displays out there. Now, in trying to think how to introduce today's show, I was trying to think, what do I know about curators?
What do you know?
Pretty much nothing. So I had to really dig deep.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why I love this show. We do get to know some of the ins and outs of the business and also the joy of art that we wouldn't necessarily be familiar with. But you and I just watched a movie recently called, I think it was Velvet Buzzsaw.
Oh, yes.
And check it out on Netflix if you want to have an interesting experience.
It's bizarre, yes.
Absolutely. You can tell from the title, Velvet Buzzsaw.
Yes.
But one of the things I absolutely loved about it was how they made fun of the art world, but did it almost in a respectful fashion.
Yes.
The stereotypes, and we've even watched episodes of Frasier, for example. That's a show that we very much enjoy. And there is an episode particularly that has to do with an art gallery.
And how to interpret the art.
Absolutely. And when you walk into the art gallery, you have, let us get some brie. The brie is sweating and very highbrow.
Yes.
And all of these stereotypes about artists and such, we were actually very blessed to be able to bust some of those stereotypes when we had Del Parson on just a few shows ago, talking about painting and such. But I'm very happy to say that we have someone in the studio who is extremely genuine, not a stereotype of the art world, but somebody who is an absolute pleasure to pass in the hallway and have a conversation with.
And you'll see her at the Eccles.
Absolutely. Very soon,
yes.
we are going to be plugging an event, certainly on this show. But welcome to On the Arts, Kathy Cieselwicz.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, we're excited to have you here today.
Now, as I mentioned, you're the curator of the Sears Gallery?
Yes, I came in 2004 with the building.
Okay, you came with
You
the
came
building.
with the building.
Part of the package.
Now, can you explain the Sears Gallery for those in our audience who don't know what that is?
Well, it's a beautiful space in the Eccles Fine Arts Center, and it took 20 years for a wonderful group of patrons from Dixie to make it possible to have that building and the Sears Art Museum.
20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my goodness. What a dream.
Well, you say you came with the building. Were you part of the fundraising and part of the planning of it?
No.
Well, how did you get along with it?
I was really lucky, and that whole story behind that is kind of interesting because I was being trained and mentored by Glenn Blakely.
Really? Glenn Blakely, who, of course, teaches here right now, here at Dixie State University. He, I think, came with the university. You came with the building. He came. He is, I believe, the oldest practicing professor we have here on campus, if I'm correct.
Yeah, he's wonderful.
Actually, yeah, he remembers back when Dixie was founded, and
my
he remembers all the way back to when the desert was formed back at the beginning of time,
And he's still teaching.
absolutely,
Wow.
He's got a lot to teach. He's a wonderful, wonderful man. And one of the things I love about Glenn is he's not only quite an accomplished artist and teacher, but if you come to the dance concerts, at the end of the semester or such, for the past few years, there's been a number that's been dedicated to Glenn Blakely. And you'll actually see some of that man's mad moves on stage if they're still doing the number. Yes.
Oh, no.
Absolutely. But, Kathy, so you weren't involved with the fundraising of
No.
How did you get here? Where did you come from?
Well, what it really started with was with the Sears, and Robert Sears and his wife were instrumental in making all of this happen. And they are very missed, but we get to work with their children now.
Oh.
And they're very supportive. So how did I come here? It's kind of a funny story. Do you want a funny story?
I would love one.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I came back to school later in life. And so one summer I was taking a class from Glenn Blakely. It was the last class I needed. And one day he came in and he said, "Kathy, you've got to get over to the Eccles. They're hiring the curator." And when I am not a good ceramist, and so when I throw mud, throw a pot, I throw the mud all over the room, all over me.
Yeah.
And so I went over there when Mark Peterson was there.
Mark. I remember Mark. Yeah.
And I was a mess. And he was ready to just, show me to the door. And I started talking to him. And by the end, I was hired. Now, you can't do that nowadays.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I was hired at the end of our conversation.
Well, that's wonderful. You said that you were in a class with Glenn Blakely. Did you, I hate this term start out as, because I don't think any of us ever truly give up being the artist that we are, but how did you get into curating? I mean, I know Glenn Blakely said, "Hey, that job's open," but you were taking an art class. Are you an artist?
Yes, I'm an artist.
Got it. And where did all that start?
When I was a little kid.
Mm-hmm. How so?
Well, I think I remember always loving to color. And one of my vivid memories when I was probably in second grade, one of my friends got an easel for Christmas. And I remember being very jealous because she had an easel, and that meant she was an artist, and I wasn't.
Oh. That was no wonder. I never had an easel, so that explains so much.
We'll keep you away from drawing at this point. But so did you continue to study it all through school? Did you go to school for art?
I did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was, I had some of my children will say, "Well, why don't you get a real degree, or why don't you get a real job?" But it was the right thing for me to do. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing ever wrong with getting any kind of degree in the arts, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right.
There are so many ways to make that work in a career field.
Yeah.
And they're actually looking for people who are creative now in big institutions and all kinds of businesses, because we know how to solve problems theater, everything is about solving problems, right?
Right.
And how to be creative and come up with new ideas. Our world needs that.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned that you threw pots, or you attempted to throw pots.
Yeah.
Slinging the mud.
Slinging the muds.
And you mentioned that you had a friend who got an easel. What was your area of art, if you will? What did you love to do besides throw mud on the walls?
During the time that I had children, I was doing a lot of different craft things, and I was painting. I always had my fingers in arts in one way or another, and I knew that I always wanted to be a painter. And I am still a painter. I just don't have very much time to do it because I work, you know how it is in the arts. We work at least 10 hours a day, and it's a 24/7 job.
Well, that's where I have to tell you, quite often, I'll be up in the administrative offices, which are right next to the Sears gallery, and we always have, people coming in looking for either access to the gallery or quite often looking for you. And it's become very, very common for them to say, could you please point me to Kathy Cieselwicz's office? And I'm like, sure, I can point you there, but you're not going to find her. You are a very, very busy individual, I will say.
Well, like I say, it's a 24/7 job, and there's all kinds of aspects to it. If I was only doing curator work, it would not be so hard. But that entails a lot of things: writing, grant writing. It means building educational outreach programs, which I think we've been really successful in doing. And you're always planning ahead. Right now, I'm out on planning shows for the next 4 years.
Oh,
Whoa.
wow.
And how far is standard to plan out? Is it about a 5-year span, or?
Well, in big museums, often a curator will work on a show for 20 years because they're finding ways to gather art from all over the world for a big show. Mine is not on that kind of a level, but you have to plan out that far in order for it to all come together when it's supposed to.
Well, and I would like to get into more detail as to what it is a curator do. I can speak English. A curator does. But I'm still fascinated that you came from Glenn Blakely's art class.
Yes, I was just going to say,
yeah.
what was it about you that he said you need to go try out for this job?
Well, he was very well aware, we all were, that this Sears Art Museum was being built. And so for many years, I went on Glenn's L.A. and San Francisco art trips.
Those are famous trips.
Yeah, they're wonderful, and we need to get people aware of those. That's a really important thing to talk about someday. But every time I went, I would do some research. And so after 9/11, for instance, so you're hearing all my weird stories.
That's all right.
That's why you're here.
That's why you're here.
After 9/11, we were in the Norton Simon Museum, and I was checking out the lighting, because lighting is like the jewel part of, that's what really makes the art come alive. And so I was looking at all the lights and making notes, and there happens to be a big Oculus light in the Norton Simon. And so I was looking at that, and they had a lot of extra security there. And all of a sudden I had 3 big guards on me, and they were wondering what I was doing.
What?
And the first thing that came to my mind was, what's his name? All of a sudden, it slipped my mind. That comes down.
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
No.
When he comes down out of the ceiling, and he's eagle stranding 2 inches from the wall, the floor, I mean. And so I, ever since I've gone in there, I thought they probably see my face as I come through the door and say, keep an eye on her.
They've got those postcards with all of the people to watch. And I don't know how I feel about the fact that you just sang The Person Suspended, and I went right to Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
We have a
I wonder how you
simpatico
knew that
here.
too. Yeah.
That's right. And I have to say, I'm rather amused that you were such a security risk. If you don't know Kathy Cieselwicz,
hilarious.
She is one of the most unassuming,
Yes.
polite, pleasant people you'll ever see
thank
walking
you.
along the
Well,
hall.
you know those art thieves, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
I read books about that.
Yeah.
so Kathy, let's get into some of the details of what is a curator. All I can picture is Ricky Gervais from Night at the Museum, walking around and saying, "Welcome to my museum."
Looking
no,
like a host.
That wouldn't be what it's like. But there are curators of education. In museums, they're curators of, all different kinds of museums. And so basically what I do is plan, prepare, and do all the logistics to make the exhibits. Oh. So that is one aspect of what I do. That means that I've really worked hard over a lot of years to have really good relationships with lots of artists, lots of kinds of artists from all over, and build relationships with the Utah Division of Arts and Museums and all of those kinds of things. And I think we do a really good job of diversity in art and kinds of people and in our exhibits throughout these years. And so I feel really happy about that. That's something that I'm really aware of. And it's not a very good idea to repeat a show closer than like 10 years apart. But that opens up the door for all kinds of wonderful different kinds of exhibits working with different kinds of artists.
Gotcha. I do have to say I appreciate having the Sears Gallery right there. And I love when I'm having a tough day or something in my office, I get to walk out and just walk through the museum. And there have been some very exciting displays, I have to say. There's actually a very exciting one up right now in the museum. I don't believe it's opened officially yet, or has it?
No, it hasn't. It opens. It's always the Friday of President's Weekend in February, and this is the 32nd year of the Dixie Sears Invitational Art Show and Sale. It is our only fundraiser, and it is becoming more and more important for that reason. But this is something that Bob Sears initiated because he knew that we needed art on campus. He wanted to get good art into people's homes and to educate people about good art. And so we've had that as our mission for that show all of these years. And so now we have a really nice permanent art collection just from the Purchase Prize winners. And it's a very renowned and well-known show. People come from all over the United States to see it.
Oh, wow.
And it's a great opportunity for patrons who we love to come and buy the art because we have a 37% commission, which when they buy a piece of art, that is a donation to the Sears Art Museum, and they get a tax deduction. So it's a wonderful place to buy art. We have a lot of the top artists in Utah and in the Western United States, and it's it's pleasant for people to bring their families. We have school groups, we have scout groups, we have all kinds of people that come to this Sears Invitational. It's really a wonderful show, and it's based on traditional realism. So that means there's a subject in it, but there's a broad range of abstraction from trompe-l'oeil, which means fool the eye, and almost photorealism to even past what we would call a more impressionistic style of art. So we're really trying to push that end of things a little bit more. So we have a good variety for anybody who likes art, who wants to purchase art, that they can come in there and find something that they can't live without.
Oh, yes. And I imagine there's always someone there to guide a person that wants to buy something, and if you don't understand anything about art, to have someone explain these pieces?
Well, we do have some wonderful hosts and hostesses.
Great.
And only during that exhibit.
Okay.
And they do a very good job, and they love to help people and
so you
encourage
don't feel
them
lost.
to buy the art and how to buy it.
And understand the pieces. Oh, that's great.
Well, I can speak personally to the exhibit that's in there. I can't wait for this to open. And I was thinking the other day, actually, walking by, there are two pieces in particular, and I'm not going to give away what they are.
But I want to hear this.
I will tell you that I've always been fascinated by merry-go-rounds and with the horses on those, frankly. And one of the nice things about working in the Eccles is I get to see the setup of the show. Quite often just walking by and seeing it being set up. And I saw these two pieces that really grabbed my attention. Now, if you've seen The Godfather, you might know where I'm going with some of this and me loving horses and such from the merry-go-round. But please note, this is much more pleasant than The Godfather.
Yeah, I was just...
But I was walking by and I was struck by these pieces. And what I love is when I walk by the Sears gallery, there are lots of great displays. But every once in a while, there's a display that literally somehow draws me in.
Yeah.
And these two pieces, I have to tell you, are drawing me in. I cannot wait for those doors to open to see some more. Another thing that has drawn me in the past, and we talked a little bit about this with Del Parson, Julie Rogers, who is, I'm assuming, a local artist.
She lives in Kanab.
I'll tell you, I can spot her work anywhere. And I'm not an art expert by any means. But I remember when I first got here a little over 10 years ago, there was a display and I walked in and this one piece just mesmerized me. And I think it was you that I asked. I said, who did this? And you said, Julie Rogers. And that name stuck with me. And every single display, Julie, if you are listening, I love your work. Every single display I can point to and say that's hers.
Right.
And I love her work. And I am desperately on the air begging you to let me meet Julie Rogers at some point.
Oh, absolutely. And she's here quite often. And she's traveling all over the world for what we call it scrap, but photographs and resource information for her paintings. And she is very well known, mostly for her paintings of pioneers and the stories behind the paintings.
They're dynamic.
Yeah.
They're wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, when you're setting up these exhibits, we are in a rather conservative area when it comes down to it.
No, we're not.
And yeah, absolutely. And when we think about painting and such, there's really not a whole lot of thought I found about controversial or evocative painting. And we know there is a lot of that out there when you go all around the world and such. How do you go about setting up this exhibit for, you mentioned people coming from all over to see it, respecting not only what is accepted as decent, but also respecting the fact that there are people coming from other areas who will expect a certain breadth of art?
Well, if you've ever been in a museum anywhere in Utah or the United States or the world, you're not surprised to see nudes. And artists become artists by drawing from nudes. It's a historically accepted way for artists to learn how to draw. And from the second show that has been in that space, there have been many nude pieces of art. And a lot of times you don't even notice them. But we've had really beautiful pieces, and sometimes people want to make them controversial, but they're not. And they're not even close to being anything that would be pornographic or anything.
Right.
But beautiful pieces of art, because artists look at the body in a different way. They look for line and form, and that's how they learn how to draw.
Well, I think it was my second year here, and we had just started to get to know each other. I mean, I said we passed each other in the hall for a whole year, and you were always very pleasant. But I remember there was an exhibit that had gone up, and I was walking outside, or just outside the gallery, and you were in the doorway. And you said, would you come here for a second? And I said, sure. And you just said, you gave me this challenge, would you please go through this gallery and tell me if there's anything that stands out to you and affects you in the wrong way? And I thought, well, okay, that's a pretty provocative challenge right there. So, I walked around and I saw some really great stuff, some stuff that was inspiring and such. And I remember getting back to the door and you looked at me kind of expectantly, what's your reaction? And I just said, no, I thought it was all beautiful. And you just said, thank you, me too. And apparently you had gotten, a patron had wondered about some of the art that was on the walls. But I just saw beautiful, beautiful stuff.
Well, it's just something that part of this is educational, right? That's the reason we have the Sears, is for the education of the students and for the community. And so one response I got one time was, "Oh no, not in St. George." Well, what we have is beautiful pieces of art in there, and it's a great way to teach children respect
Yes.
And if someone has a problem with that, they came in with a problem. And, well, take a look at what we have in the back of the gallery.
Yeah.
We have a Pietà.
Which is absolutely beautiful, by the way. And it's the Pietà. It's a what is the word for it? A reconstruction of
it's a cast from the original Michelangelo piece that's in the Vatican.
And I'll say, I mean, some of the ancient statues and such, we look at them and they're absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Well, that's where we get our idea of beauty, is from the Greek ideal of the perfect form.
Gotcha. Well, now there are also other, we're talking about the controversial stuff or things of that sort. There's also a lot of other art. You mentioned that there is a wide variety of art that you have in there. I've seen a lot of landscapes in there. I've seen photography in there.
Yes.
We have
Sculptures.
pottery that was not just mud flung on the walls, but actually really well-crafted stuff. Do you have a favorite kind of art that you find yourself leaning towards?
Did you get excited about to put up?
I do for sure. And sometimes I'm really excited about a show because maybe I'm excited about the theme or the artist or whatever. But really, when you go into a museum, you just there's a lot of art there, and you'll just walk past. And then if you have an emotional tie to a piece of art, that's when you stop and you look at it. And that artist knows how to keep your eye within the painting through the principles of design. So it is a very emotional thing. And, of course, you already mentioned why you were attracted first to those horses.
It just touched something, and they are beautiful, beautiful pieces. I can tell that I haven't even been inside the gallery to get close to them. But even just looking at them, beyond the glass, I guess it's like watching the Mona Lisa. It's behind glass and it's 15 feet away and much smaller than I thought. Actually, I saw this like postage stamp in front of me when I actually saw it. Sorry to blow the...
It's about 30 by 23 inches.
Yeah, a lot smaller than I expected, actually.
You thought it was a whole wall.
Yeah, there's something like, you build it up in your mind. But I encourage all of our listening audience, check this out. And it is free to get into the gallery, except for the opening night.
Yes, I was just going to ask.
Right. So for the Friday night of President's Weekend, at 3 o'clock, there's a symposium where the previous year, the artist who won the purchase prize does a symposium, and they bring a lot of their art. They talk about their art and their process or whatever they want to talk about. That's in the concert hall at 3 o'clock. And then at 4 o'clock, there's a preview. And then at 6 o'clock, there's a gala, and there's a charge for that. We have nice entertainment, and this year the meal is going to be really good. I'm really excited about that.
Great.
Of course. And but then what happens?
Free food? No, it's not free. But,
No, they pay to come to the invitational, because if they come that first night and they see something they really want, then I'm inside of the gallery, and when it's time to go in and I open the doors, literally people run in because they have to pick their card of the piece that they want. And if they're not fast enough, they have to go to their second choice.
No.
So it's really wonderful. And some people say, well, I just can't decide. I'll come back on Monday. And sometimes it's gone.
It'll be gone.
And
it's like the Black Friday of the art world.
And then the other thing that's interesting with this exhibit is pieces that I know they're going to sell. They're just so fantastic. And they might not. And pieces that I'm really surprised that they sold. But it's because everybody has a different like and dislike.
Right.
And art is so subjective. So you could say about this across the whole gamut of all of the arts. It's everything you think, do, and say in your whole life, you come before that kind of art, whether it's music or whatever, and you decide instantly if you like it or you don't. And so it's very subjective.
So now, if we wanted to go on a date night to this, do we go online to get tickets? Where do we get tickets?
You call Janine Ney in all of our postcards and publicity. There's a phone number. It is 435-652 7537.
Okay.
And you'll reach Janine Nay, and she can help you. And yes, I just want to remind you that it is Valentine's.
Oh.
And it's a wonderful place to shop for
How
Valentine's.
romantic, too, to buy a piece of art together.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wink, wink.
Or for
Yeah.
a surprise.
Oh,
you know?
surprise, yes. And this is a dress-up, beautiful night.
The gala.
The gala
Yeah.
is a dress. Oh, very nice.
I'll tell you, I've always been impressed with how formal the gala is, and it's not inaccessible. That's not what I'm
No,
saying
it
by
isn't.
it.
Yeah.
But there is a respect. All of the patrons that come to this have a respect, and there's this kind of opening night energy
Yes.
to when the gallery opens, and you see all of these people who are dressed very nicely. And you mentioned the entertainment. I've seen quartets, I've seen
Yes.
quintets, and it's a very classy event. To the point that I didn't always know this event was going on. I have to say, this is how, monocular I am with my world. But I remember walking into the Eccles one night, and there were all these people really well dressed up. I have never felt like such a sore thumb in my life. I had
You're dressed
my
like a slob.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
I had my happy, comfortable slob clothes.
Yeah.
And I walk in, and it was like I'd walked into, I don't know, New York, the Modern Museum of Art, or the Museum of Modern Art. And I was really, really impressed from that time on. I really do look forward to just seeing who comes out to this and feeling the
I
energy.
can imagine the personalities that show up. This is probably a wonderful evening.
And I have dress shoes available in case I forget and I need to go to my office and put them on very quickly.
Oh, they're hiding in your office now?
Absolutely,
Perfect.
yes.
You're ready. Yes.
Well, I don't have anything to wear. I don't know what I'm
Oh,
going to do.
Kathy.
So. Because I'm with you. I'm very casual. I'm not the little black dress with the
dear.
tight bun and back
Yeah,
curator.
oh, no.
You know, I'm not like that at all. It's like this is
But
what
that's
I
what
am.
makes you approachable. I mean, yeah, we can approach Kathy anytime
Yeah,
and talk
I
art.
hope
We don't
so.
feel intimidated.
Not like those stereotypes in the movie we
Yes.
saw.
No.
Yeah,
Velvet
the movie we
Buzzsaw.
saw where they're all
Maybe I
snobby.
wish I was a little like that. But,
Uh-oh.
yeah, for
No.
sure.
I like
No,
it
we
just
don't
the
want
way
you to-
you
yeah,
are.
stay the way you are,
thank you,
Kathy.
Well, let me ask you, you said that you are a painter yourself, and I can attest to the fact that I don't see how you ever have time to do anything like paint,
Yeah.
seeing what you do as the curator. But have you ever displayed your own work or had any desire to display your own work?
Yes.
Ah.
And before, well, let's see. Yeah, but I'm only in little shows. Not like I should be. I'm not producing enough art to really get my art out there in big shows. But I am going to retire when I'm 70 in 4 years, and I
No.
plan
You are
to
kidding
paint.
me. Not kidding
I'm
me
going
that
to
you'll
paint.
retire, but in 4 years you'll be 70.
Yeah.
You just said that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, well, we have a lot of people who lie on our shows. I never would have called that, frankly.
And
Yeah,
you-
but remember we were talking about our knees.
Oh,
I feel that old.
yes, we had quite a conversation before the
Yeah,
show
we were
started about,
discussing knees, and
knee
surgery,
replacement
Yes.
and-
Yeah.
Oh.
and several of us feel out of joint
And so you
quite
said when
often.
you said when you retire, you're going to just paint, and
Yeah, and be a grandma and all those kinds of things that I love to do.
that sounds so romantic. Oh, why not? Right? Oh,
I think so.
yes. You've done a lot of work for Dixie State. I mean, this is
Well, I
amazing
love
what
it
you've
here.
done. Yeah,
I love it here.
you'd have to.
I love
Yeah.
I love the programs I've put together, and we've had a lot of state recognition, and I've had a lot of recognition because of those programs. And I love walking into that building. Don't you feel
Oh,
that way?
Yes.
a great energy,
It's
a great
so
energy.
beautiful there. Yeah, and it's great to see. I especially love it when the students, the art students, have theirs on display. What
Yeah.
an honor to have your work there. I could only imagine. But that's it's so much. It's such a beautiful thing to have in the Eccles. Yeah.
That's what it's for.
Yeah.
Now we go to our hard-hitting journalism right now.
Oh, no, where are you going?
A few questions about you, Kathy.
Uh-oh.
You mentioned a few things that I'd like to address on this. You mentioned that you have been recognized. Do I recall that you've been recognized as Educator of the Year and things of this sort by various organizations?
What?
Yeah, I have been, and also I had a governor's award for leadership in the arts.
Oh.
Gotcha. And that's where I do think that's something that people may forget when they see you walking through the halls and such, because we see you setting up the Sears gallery all the time. We see you dealing with artists and things of that sort. But something that could easily be lost is the fact that you do share your passion for this by teaching it and helping everybody understand what is passionate for you.
And I do teach.
And how many classes do you teach here?
I don't teach here. I teach at Mojave Community College.
Oh, okay, got it.
And so I teach all of their studio
That's why I
classes.
couldn't find you in the catalog. I was thinking, I want to take a class.
And I've been doing it for, I think, 11 years. And this semester I'm teaching art history, Renaissance to the present. And it is so fun because the classes are small. And for instance, this time I've got 11 students, and we kind of sit around make the table so it's a big square, and we discuss and talk about the art. It's just, just really fun, unless there's a blizzard.
That's right.
I can imagine.
You also organized, this was a few years ago that I participated, but a group of artists from different genres getting together. There was myself, I believe it was Dr. Webb, who was there for music, and I think Glenn Blakely. I don't recall who exactly was, but was that something that you organized personally, or?
Well, that's something that I'm probably more interested in than anything is collaborations. And sometimes I get going in one direction, kind of forget that end of things. But for instance, we just had a collaboration with Arts to Zion, and we had Carlisle's, do you know him, the jazz musician here in town? Their band is absolutely amazing.
And that's Carlisle's?
Yeah. And we had now I've forgotten I apologize. I can't think of the dance group's name, but I love it when we have cross sections of people who love different kinds of art. Because, for instance, if they come in, so we have dancers that interpret a piece of art, and then so the people will come to see the dancers, or they come to see the art, and then they learn about each other and about their art form, and it is just amazing to see that happen, and especially with students. I would like every student on campus to be in that gallery all the time, because they can learn so much, and you can have quiet conversation. Yeah. You can just go in there and relax. It's really a great space. And then we have sculpture gardens on campus too. But we have a lot of opportunities for all kinds of people, and I think the collaborations are the best for bringing the best of the arts together. I love having poetry readings in there. We had, I don't know if you saw the last show of Leo Krikorian that has passed away, but he was a beat artist in San Francisco. And I got to know his daughter, and so I went to her house several times to get pieces of art down here so we could have that exhibit. And so we had a beat poet. We had they played the jazz from the 1950s. It was just, it was wonderful. And then the interpretation of through dance. So those kinds of things are just really fun.
Where do we go to find out the information about these kind of events when they're coming up?
Well, we have postcards and posters around town, but often, people don't see those. Yeah. But we do have a website.
Wonderful.
And what would that be?
What would that be?
It's searsart.com.
Perfect.
Very that's easy enough.
That's easy to remember. Anyone can put that in.
Yeah.
Searsart.com. And the number that could be called earlier, that was 435-652...
7537. I hope that's right.
And that is
Janine Nay.
And that is for the gala.
To get tickets for the gala.
Okay.
I always hesitate with numbers or dates or anything because I fail with numbers in any way.
And we might be calling your father. We might be calling a relative. We don't know.
But Janine will take really good care of anybody that calls.
Oh, and such a great date opportunity.
And we will have some tickets available at the door.
Oh,
so
good.
We want everybody to come. We love our patrons. We depend upon them. And we have patrons that have been buying art there for the full 32 years. Oh. They started out with Bob Sears. And they have collections that are worth a lot of money now. In fact, we see a lot of the artists in the gallery, like right now, who I know that their art will be valued a lot higher by next year even. So they have big collections. Some of them are not collecting anymore, but they're bringing other collectors with them because they still want to support what we do there.
Oh, wonderful. Wow.
Now, I mentioned that we had a few questions for you, the hard-hitting journalism. And by the way, we don't do hard-hitting journalism here. But you mentioned earlier that you are a grandparent. Let me ask you, is your home full of art and your passion for art? Is this something you have and there are other interests around? Are you able to pass this on to your grandchildren?
Yeah. I have a lot of art in our home. I don't have enough space for the art that I have. I don't have a studio that I need to do my own. We're working on that. But yeah, it's our homes have always been full of art, and our children and grandchildren are doing art. None of my children are professional artists, but they could be.
Wonderful. Well, that's right. I'm fascinated by the whole world of art, and I'll tell you, it's something that I mentioned this to Del Parson. I used to think, oh, art, it's people paint things and people sculpt things, and it was actually an interview that was had with Steve Martin, the actor and comedian Steve Martin, where I was stunned at how articulate he was about art and how much there was to talk about art.
Right.
In fact, the interview that I'm talking about, there was practically a riot when he performed this because people bought tickets to see him interviewed, and they wanted to hear about his film experience. They wanted to hear him talk about being in The Jerk and things of that sort. But it ended up being a conversation, a whole evening conversation about art. And there were actually some people who sued for fraud because they didn't realize that he knew art that well, and that conversation was going to be about that.
He's a huge collector.
Oh, huge. I think he had his personal collection was on display in Las Vegas for just a few years ago, I think.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And it's fascinating to hear him and hear you and hear Del Parson. It's a whole world that has been opened up. That's one of the reasons I love this show.
Yes,
frankly.
yes.
Now, Kathy, I have to ask you, this is an issue with me. I have brought this up with Mayor Pike when he was on this show.
Oh,
I've brought this up with many guests.
There's nothing wrong with
There is a huge arachnid downtown right now. A spider that is way too big, bigger than any spider ought to be as far as I'm concerned. I have to ask you, how do you feel about this old spider being right in the middle of St. George?
I think it's a great thing. And this artist has... we have oh man, you catch me where I go brain dead. But there's a very, very famous artist that just passed away several years ago, and she was famous for her spiders that were even bigger than that.
Wow. Yay.
I got the opportunity a couple times, one time in San Francisco to see one, and then at the in Bilbao, and walking under that spider that she made, bronze, but it was frightening, because you could see like an egg sac, and it's absolutely huge, and so I think this artist that did the one in town was definitely inspired by that and used different mediums.
Oh, it's fantastic.
And it sure is.
Aren't there license plates on it at one part?
And it takes it. It grabs your attention, doesn't it?
Every time.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I actually shy away now.
I drove by it today, and I'm actually going to be very sad if when they take this down, because I really love that it being the middle of St. George.
Well, art around the corner is one of the wonderful things that we have here in town. Yeah. And the way that works is people have an opportunity. It's like they rent a piece through Art Around the Corner, and then we always hope that they will purchase that piece, and it becomes a part of. It's on the sidewalks along St. George. We have a beautiful collection of sculpture all through town that really adds a lot to our city.
Yeah. We had a friend from New York come, and she was amazed at the beauty of this place and the art that's around town. It just shows that how our city supports the arts. So.
That's for sure.
And we mentioned earlier, I do have to say, as much as I'm squeamish about the subject matter of this very large sculpture. The crafting of it is pretty extraordinary.
Well, you did.
It is.
I did see that the mayor spoke to the city, and he had a big picture of it behind him.
Did he really?
Yes.
Was this recently?
Yes. You'll have to check out the.
Oh my
picture.
goodness!
Mhm.
Yeah, and we
We're
actually
very proud of that spider.
we had him on the show and we
Yeah.
discussed this a
We
little
had
bit.
a discussion.
It's and I do have to say that the craftsmanship is fascinating.
I
And
love it.
as much as I bring it up with a smile on my face,
know.
I have to know what
I loved
people
it at
think.
Christmas. So the spider was all lit
Okay,
up.
But it's thought provoking. It
this
really
is what we do. We find a patron that will buy that and donate it to the university so we can have it on campus.
Yay!
I had the perfect spot
Look at his
for it.
face. Look
right
at his
outside
face.
my window. There, I
Pretty much, it would be.
I have an office now. I was so excited to get an office with a window,
I want
and it's
it
a
right
sculpture
out the
garden.
window.
Oh, please
There
do
is-
not.
It would be down a little bit.
Okay, good.
With little spider babies.
Now, as I mentioned earlier in the show, and Christine and I, we find this every single time. Kathy, we are out of
We're
time.
out of time.
Okay.
What a
by fast.
wonderful thing to have you
Yeah.
here. This is your second appearance on
Oh,
the
we
Arts.
hope many
Good.
more. Yes.
Good.
Yep.
And
We'll
is,
do it.
is there anything else you'd like us to know about the Sears Gallery or the opening gala that's happening?
Definitely to remember those dates for the gala on the 16th, 15th. And then it opens to the public on Saturday. And then our hours this year will be Monday through Saturday, 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock. And it's always free. People
great.
return many, many times. And we just want everyone to come.
Wonderful.
And if you're listening right now and you do want some more information, please know you can contact Christina and myself at On the Arts on Facebook. You can also contact Kathy Cieselwicz, the curator of the
Yes,
Sears Gallery, with any questions you may have. I highly recommend this. I've had the pleasure, like I've said, of walking by this gallery. I've had the pleasure of walking
Beautiful.
in the gallery and experiencing the work. There's a tremendous amount of craftsmanship, a tremendous amount of skill, a tremendous amount of effective art that is
Yeah.
there that I don't think enough people can see. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for all you do.
And thank you for everybody for joining us. I do believe we have an event coming up or an audition coming up.
Well, yes. Well, Tuesday we actually will have Josh France and his mother on, and she is involved with Brigham's Playhouse. She's the choreographer for How to Succeed in Business, who are holding their auditions this February 12th from 5 to 7. And if you miss that day, you can come back on Wednesday, February 13th from 5 to 7 and audition for this play. Do not feel intimidated at all. It's a community play, and they will embrace you and make you better on stage. So it should be fun.
Now, you keep saying they.
Yes.
I'd like to say if you'd like an opportunity to meet half of the show of On the Arts, that would be my beautiful wife and co-host, Christina
stop.
Harding.
Yes.
She is the stage manager, so even if she's not
Just
there
a
at the
little job.
auditions, she very well might be.
And I'm friendly and I'm nice and I want to have a good time.
Absolutely. And you want a date to the art gallery.
And I
got
really
that
do.
hint loud
Yeah.
and clear. Just so you know, there are some wonderful, wonderful people involved with that. And there are many opportunities. We hope that you'll keep your ear to
Yes.
the ground
Please do.
for opportunities to see art, to experience
And be
theater,
on our
to hear
show.
music,
We
and
wanna
be
talk
on
to
our
you.
show.
If you're an artist, we want to talk to you.
And until next time, we hope you'll keep your focus on the arts.